right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Denali webinar for April 1st, 2015. Today we're going to be talking about how to set up bill of material stock items in the Denali Inventory module. So we've got quite a bit to cover today, and we'll try to get through it all. Glad you're all here with us today. My name is Jeremy Beislein. I'll be your... Oh, whoa, what's going on with that? That isn't me. That is Kevin. He's the other trainer here. I must have forgot to change the picture. So, that's it. Everybody's a comedian, aren't they? Today's April 1st, so April Fools, everyone. There I am. That's me. Thanks for joining us today. So I'll be your presenter today. My name is Jeremy Beislein. I am a software trainer here at Cougar Mountain Software. Okay, so today's agenda, we are going to talk about how to set up bill of material items in the inventory module. In Denali, bill of material items are also known as kits. Basically, it's a stock item that is actually made up of other component items. So we'll talk about how that's done. We'll also cover the reports regarding kits that are set up in Denali. And then we'll talk about actually adding the items to inventory, the kit items, and what Denali does in the process of assembling those kit items once they're set up. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started on how to set up your kits or bill of material stock items in the Denali inventory. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we have to establish a stock item that we're going to be using as a kit. So basically what we'll do is we come in here in the inventory stock maintenance screen and we create the item. If we don't have it set up already here, we create the item that we're going to be using for a kit item. This item we create here will actually be made up of other components, other items that we have set up in inventory. So you just create the item just like you would any other regular item here in Denali Inventory. The last cost, you can leave that at 0 when you're creating the kit item, because when you update the information from the components that make up the kit, the last cost will automatically update for you. So what I've done is I've already got an item created here that we're going to use as a kit. Now in our demo company, this item is called the Office Group, and we've gone ahead and given it a number. That's like a SKU or a serial, a barcode number for this item. Now this Office Group item, we're going to set it up to where it's made up of other inventory items in our system. So now that we have our item created, then we are going to build the kit. So here is our setup kits. This is our bill of material stock item. We go ahead and put that in here. So we select our item that we just created that's going to be our kit. This is our kit item, and you can select any items in your inventory list and turn that into a kit item or a bill of materials stock item. You can change the description here if needed for the kit. Then the costing method, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. I'm going to skip over that for just a moment because the costing method is set based on the components that you add here. So we'll talk about adding the components first, and then we'll jump back to costing method on that as we're adding components. So now what happens is you put your bill of material stock item in. Now we're going to come down and we're going to add the other items that make up this item, make up our kit basically. So the detail type is what is the type of item we are adding. We've got two options here. We have inventory or non-inventory. If it's an inventory item, then our component is selected from a list of all of our inventory items that we already have set up in Denali Inventory here. So for this small office group, or this office group that we're setting up as a kit, we're going to include a chair. We just need one chair for this kit. And the unit cost automatically defaults as the last cost from the component. Now here's where our costing method comes in. If we leave that set to detail, then you can type in whatever you want for the unit cost to establish the actual cost of our kit item. And you'll type in the unit cost for each component to establish the actual kit cost. The kit item actual cost is the total of all of the unit costs in our grid here. If we use last cost, then this will automatically update what the last cost of our components are when we click on the Update Cost button here. So every time you come in here and click on Update Cost, it'll update what the last cost is from all of our components. If we use our valuation method, it will use the valuation method of each component as established in the inventory code. And when we click Update Cost, you notice that the unit cost just changed because the valuation method for this component is set differently than last cost. If it's set as FIFO, it's going to take the first cost in, first cost out for our valuation. I believe in this case we've got it set as average. Weighted average is our valuation method. So therefore, the unit cost is now a weighted average when we click Update Cost of each of our components based on the inventory code that each component is set up under. You can also click Update at Posting, which automatically updates each component's unit cost for the kit every time a transaction is posted involving this kit item. So you don't have to come in and click Update Cost to get the updated cost. If you check this box here, it'll just keep that updated every time a transaction posts. So we've got the first item for our kit set up. That's our chair. So we're also going to add to this kit another inventory item, and that's going to be our hanging file kit. And we need 2 of those for this kit. So we put in quantity 2. The unit cost, if we update cost here, it will automatically update it based on the valuation method for this item. Then we're going to add another item from inventory here. Let's see, what else do we need for our office group? We're going to need a computer desk, so we're going to add one of those. And then we're also going to need maybe a desk lamp. I got that in here somewhere. Let's do a couple of desk lamps here. We'll need 2 of those. So as you can see, you add all the items that make up your bill of materials stock item. That's how you do that when you're setting this up. Let's see, we're going to want a couch in the office in case we have company. And let's go ahead and add one more item for our lamp. We're going to need light bulbs. So there's a list of all of our components that make up the kit item. One other thing that we didn't talk about yet is non-inventory. Let's say we want to add a non-inventory item to this kit. So when you do non-inventory, it asks you to just type in a component name, whatever you want to call it. This does not bring up a list of your non-inventory codes from sales. This is completely separate from that. Basically, your non-inventory is whatever you want it to be on your kit items. So let's say we're going to add freight as a non-inventory to this item because we need to have the freight cost included when we assemble this kit item. So the description would be freight charges, there we go. And let's say the freight for this item is $15. So we put in a unit cost of $15. Now for non-inventory, there's no way to automatically update the cost with the last cost or valuation method since we're not dealing with inventory items. So non-inventory will default to the detailed costing method. You have to manually type in the cost for your non-inventory components. And then you also have to put in the expense account for the non-inventory components. So basically for freight, that's going to be expensed out under shipping and postage. Find my expense account here. There we go, right there. There's our expense. So whenever you assemble the kit item, it'll automatically post the amount of freight for this item for each quantity you're assembling to the expense account for shipping and freight. Alternatively, you could use a different account here. Instead of shipping and freight expense, you could use a different account, such as another asset account, for example, for kit components. You might have that set up that you're using, and you can add your non-inventory debit side of the transaction to that account instead. Denali doesn't care which account you put here as the control account. Basically, that's the account that gets the debit when you add the item here to your assembly. since it's going to be expensing out the freight charges. So once you've got all of your components filled out, we go ahead and save our kit here. And now you can add additional kit items as needed. Here's the one we just set up here, the office group. And as you can see, the valuation method gives you a total cost up here under estimated cost based on our valuation method, on our costing method. If we update the cost, it'll update the cost of every one of these items based on our valuation method for each item. Or if we want to go with last cost, update the cost. Now our price changes based on the last cost for each of these items. And we've got it set to automatically update at posting. Okay, so now that we've got the kit item established, every time we add those items to our inventory, the system automatically knows that it's made up of other inventory items, which we'll get to in just a moment. Before we get to that, though, we want to look at a couple of our reports here. Our next step in our webinar here is talking about the reports. The reason we go over reports first before talking about assembling the kits is because the reports tell us what we need in order to assemble our kits. So Denali has our reports set up. The first report is called the Kit Assembly Report. You can get to that report by clicking here, or up here under the Kits menu, our Kit Assembly Report right there. Basically, this report is a list of any components that you need to assemble a specific kit item, a specific bill of materials item. So let's pick our item we just created here. And let's say we want to assemble 15 of these items here. So we're going to put in 15 that we're going to build. And it automatically tells us an estimated cost per item and the total estimated production cost when we assemble those in the fields here. So let's run the report now to see what we're looking at. We're going to run this as an inquiry report, which will list all components needed to assemble 15 of these items. So here's our report. We're going to assemble this item here. Our costing method is last cost, as set up in the kit setup. We're going to assemble 15 of these items. The total assembly cost on the report tells us it's going to be this much. And then here's a list of each component we need and how many we need to assemble 15 of our bill of materials item. It also tells us the cost of each one and the total cost for each one here. Here's our total cost right here for each of the components. For our hanging file kits, we need 30 of those because we need 2 for each one of our bill of materials item. This is the total cost for 30 of those. Now this is our cost, the company cost. This isn't the selling price. The selling price is established in the inventory item setup for the kit item. This is just what it's going to cost us to assemble these items. And you can run this report for any one of your bill of material items that you have established. So now another report we can look at is the understock report. This is the same report, but it only is going to list the components that we don't have enough of to build 15 of our items, and it'll tell us how much we need. See, right now, the only component we are missing that we don't have stock in inventory is our couch. We need 15 of those. The quantity we have on hand is 0, so we are understocked those items by 15. So it's the same report, but it's only listing the items that we need, that we don't have in hand. So by running this report, you can say, oh, well, I better get some more couches in before I assemble my bill of material item. The next report is the assembled kits report. This is also known as the master kit report. You can get to that under the kits menu here. You can also get to that just right here on the main navigation screen. Now what this is a report showing all of our bill of materials items and a list of each component that's required for each of those items. It doesn't tell us how many we need for assembling a certain quantity for one item only. This is just a list of all bill of material items and each component listed under all of those items. So here's the first one we have in our system. Here's the office group. That's the one we just created. And here's a list of all the components for that item. And then here's our third. And it'll list every one of them here in this nice little report called our master kit report. And there's one other report. It's not on the navigation screen, but it is up in the Kits menu. That's the Components Requirement Report. This right here is basically a reversal of the Master Kit report. This report lists out each component that we have established set up in a kit, and then it will list each kit that that component is set up with. So in this report, we have our chair, our swivel chair, and the chair is set up as a component in all three of our bill of material kits. Then we have our folding leather chair. It's only set up under one of our kits. So any components that are set up as part of a kit will be listed on this report, and then you have a listing of each kit that that component is a part of. And that's called our Component Requirements Report there. Okay, so now that we've run our reports, now that we have figured out what we need to go ahead and assemble our kit items, now we need to go ahead and enter our kit transactions into Denali Inventory. We need to add these bill of material items to our inventory. And that is done in the Inventory Adjustment screen, Adjust Stock Quantities here. So basically, you would click here, just like adjusting any other stock quantity in your system. If we're going to add a quantity, we select the item we're adding. This is our kit item. We're going to add 15 of those to our inventory. However, in order to make sure that it includes the components to add to inventory, we need to check our box here, Bill of Material Type. If we don't check this box, this is just going to add 15 of this item without relieving the components from inventory. If we do check the box, then you notice we no longer need a transaction code. All we need is a transaction type. We're either adding or subtracting this item to inventory. And the reason we don't need a code is because the code is only required if we're just adding new items. This right here, since it's a bill of materials item, it's going to be made up of items we already have in our inventory. So therefore, a transaction code is not required. So we need a transaction number, though. That goes in the document field here. So we'll go ahead and add our number on there. That's our transaction number. We're going to add 15 of these. Assemble 15 kits. That's our description. Put whatever you want in there. We're going to add 15 of the description. Now the last cost comes up as 1. However, remember we've checked the box to update at posting automatically. So our last cost is going to automatically update when we go ahead and save and post this transaction. So we're going to save this here. And then we're going to run our edit report, just like we normally do. Now watch what this does. Rather than just adding this to inventory and then crediting either accounts payable or cash for the purchase of these items, this is going to add these to inventory, but it's going to add those items that are made up of the components. So in order for that to work, we add 15 to inventory. We subtract from inventory is going to be determined at posting. So let's take a look at our impact summary and see what that shows. Okay, so now we're going to debit the items we're adding to inventory, and there's going to be an adjustment because of the valuation method that we are using to determine this inventory. So this is the debit side of the transaction, but you notice that credit side is not accounts payable or cash for paying for these items. The credit side is our inventory accounts from the components that are making up our kits. And then we also have our expense account. That's the other control account for the non-inventory item. So therefore, it debits the inventory account that makes up our kits, whichever we have set up under the inventory code for the kit item, and it credits the other inventory accounts that the components are set up under based on the inventory code. So Denali will automatically relieve the inventory of those items when we post this transaction, and I'll show you that here real quick. So in our inventory posting, what we have here is we have items that are being added to inventory. We have 15 of our office group added to inventory, but then all of these components are subtracted from inventory that make up our office group. They're automatically subtracted. So therefore, by using the bill of materials items, and you're checking the box that says bill of materials, Denali now knows that it needs to make sure that it subtracts the components from our inventory that make up the kit that we're adding to inventory. So that's how Denali handles the transaction. And then here's our general ledger posting, which we just saw basically in the form of the impact summary. Now we're seeing the actual general ledger posting for the items that were added and subtracted from inventory. Okay, so that is how Denali Bill of Materials works. That is how you set up kits in Denali Inventory. And you can set that up any way that you want. You can set up as many kits as you need. So with that, we'll go ahead and answer the questions that we have. Okay, so this is a good question from George. It says, is it possible to do a mass recosting of all the kit items to get the new component costing? Basically, George, the way that works is whatever the last cost is on each item, that is going to be your cost that is posted for the kit itself if you're using the last cost as the costing method on the kit. If you're using the valuation method, then no, it's just going to go with whatever the valuation method is for each item, regardless of what the last cost is. So the way you would do a mass recosting is you could export your master file, the inventory master file, and then you could change that last cost on the master file export, the last cost for each item, and then re-import it back in. That way it would kind of is a shortcut way rather than going into each item in Denali and changing that last cost. Keep in mind though that every time a transaction posts for that item, the last cost is updated based on the transaction, such as a transaction from purchase order. If you receive those component items in from your vendor and the cost changes, it's going to automatically update that last cost for you for those items. Now this is another question from George. How does it work with lot control on a component item? With lot control, basically, it will just take the item from whatever lot that the last item came in on. For serialized items, right now in Denali Inventory, you cannot use a serialized item in a kit or in a bill of materials item as a component. For the lots, it'll just pull it from the last lot that came in. Okay, another question. How does it work with MLI, multi-location inventory? That's a very good question, George. The reason why is because with multi-location, it automatically will default the location of each component for the location of the bill of materials stock item itself. So when you're adding a bill of materials stock items to your inventory at a specific location, it automatically takes the components from the same location. So that is something you'll have to keep in mind for multi-location. And how many levels can you go with subkits? Another good question. Basically, the way that works is each kit is set up as a stock item itself, and then the components are set up in the kit assembly screen that we just went over today. So if you're and if you add another kit stock item as a component to another kit, then Denali has no problem with that. But what it does is it just pulls the inventory of the kit when you're assembling the parent kit for that, basically that sub kit, so to speak. It just pulls the quantity from that sub kit, from the component, to make up the parent kit. It does not go in and pull all the components from the sub kit as well. You have to assemble the sub kit first, and then you assemble the parent kit. Of course, if you don't assemble the sub-kit, it just puts the quantity for the sub-kit into the negative for you. And then to increase the quantity on the sub-kit, you would just assemble those sub-kits, basically, is how that works. And you can go as deep as you need to on that. Another good question from George says, can you use multiple units of measure to update the cost for, let's say, a 6-pack of Coke is $1/4 of a case? Basically, again, the cost is just going to look at the last cost or the valuation method. It doesn't use the different packs or anything like that. It just looks at the component item itself, and it looks at that last cost number, or it looks at the valuation method for that. Okay, and then there's a question here. In order entry, can you change the subcomponents on a kitted item on an invoice? That is not an option right now in Denali. When you add the kit item to an order in order entry, it just pulls it from the kit item itself. It doesn't, because again, Denali is just looking at the item in the master table now, not all of the components. However, there is an option to list all of the components for kit items on the ticket, but there's not an option to change those items on the ticket, on the invoice itself, without going in and changing them in the kit setup first. Another question, in order entry, if you oversell a kit item, will the system automatically consume the subcomponents? No, the system doesn't do that. What happens is if you oversell a kit item, it just puts that item into the negative quantity in the inventory module. The components doesn't change unless you go in and assemble the kit items by adding the kit items to inventory through the bill of material transaction we covered. All right. Can order entry show the kit on the invoice? Yes, that is one of the things we were talking about. There is an option in the module preferences in order entry that you can have kit items list all of the components on the invoice. It doesn't let you change those components, but it does allow you to list out all the components for the kit on the invoice if you select that option. And then there's a question here from Anaki. It says, can you have negative parts in a bill of materials? For example, I want to take a pen set of red, blue, and green pens, break it down and return a blue pen to inventory and add it back to the pen. Yes, that is a very good question. That's one of the things I didn't cover in the webinar real quick. I can go ahead and cover that for you. Basically, when you are setting up your kit, when you are assembling your kit items, we'll go ahead and use our small office group again that we talked about here, or our office group. I don't know why I keep calling it small. Bill of materials. Basically, you can disassemble your office group or your kit items as well. And to disassemble those, all you do is you change the transaction type to subtract. Now we're going to subtract 5 of these items from inventory. And what that does, since we've checked our bill of materials up here, is that disassembles 5 of our items, 5 of our kits, and it returns all of the components back to inventory. So it'll decrease this item in our inventory. It decreases it by a quantity of 5, and it'll increase all of the components by whatever quantities are required to make up this quantity of 5. So it does a reversal of what the add does. So if we disassemble or subtract the quantity, that will return all the components back to the inventory module. Amy says, last cost disappears using last cost and updates as posting sometimes. Why? Here's our kit item that we set up. Here's the last cost right here that was automatically updated when we posted the transaction that added 15, which as we can see we have 115 available now instead of just 100. Now when we bring up the kit settings for this item, our estimated cost is showing $13.59. Why is that? Because it's based on what all the unit cost items are here. If we want to update that, we click Edit, Update Cost, and it changes what the estimated cost is. Now the estimated cost is just that. It's an estimate until we actually post a transaction. When we post a transaction, this amount right here is what's going to show up as last cost, which now that we've updated cost, we can see that it matches. This amount will post and update the last cost at posting because we have our little box checked here to update at posting. Now if we switch this to valuation method and we update the cost, now our estimated is going to be $13.63 because it's based on the valuation method of each component instead of the last cost of each component. However, the item last cost here doesn't change until we actually post a transaction. But at the time of posting, this will be the amount that it will change to, unless we have other items come in that changes the weighted average amount for each of the unit costs for our components. And then we just click Update Cost to see that in the estimated cost. Now if we're using detailed, now it changes to actual cost because whatever you type here is what it's going to change the last cost to a posting, regardless of what our last cost of components are or the valuation method of the components are. The detail lets you set the cost of each component for the kit item. That's how that works. All right, so it says, how does the kitting work with miscellaneous charge from the master file on the component? Right now in Denali Inventory, the miscellaneous charge is not considered as part of the component cost of the kit when it's added to the kit. The only thing it looks at is the last cost of each component for that kit. So that's how that works. All right, so with that, we're going to go ahead and end the webinar today. I want to thank you guys for all showing up today. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and give us a call with the Cougar Mountain Tech Support call line, or you can email messages in as well. And also make sure you keep an eye out for follow-up communications on this webinar and for an actual posting of your questions and answers, and also the recorded presentation for this webinar as well.